Alright, so I got another Season 4 game for you guys. This one is between Les Invalides on the Imperial side and Letuchiy Korpus on the Coalition side. The cores are the 1812 Patriotic War or Invasion of Russia campaign, and the map is Italy 9. As you can see by the terrain, it's a pretty interesting map. You have Coalition spawns like an L shape down here, and they can take these sort of paths along the road and also try and claim this one pointer here, which is a pretty big, well, pretty difficult house to take given the size of it. The house here in the middle, this one, is this ruins house. It is quite easy to take and also to lose. You kind of have to control these high grounds around it on both sides in order to really hold this house. For Imperial, they have this house, which is quite hard to take, and these good lanes for artillery. And then this house typically doesn't play a pretty big role, given that it's almost all the way in the Imperial backlines. Sometimes you'll see like small plays through this path from Coalition to secure also this house and also gain these heights. But typically this house doesn't really play a role. This terrain here is usually helpful for Imperial to set up a gun platform, and then vice versa. This area here tends to be helpful, and here for sorry, the Coalition side. As far as cores go, Imperial brought Murat, Ney, Davout, and the Guard. Murat is a bit different in 1812, having a mix of light cav and heavy cav. It's very micro intensive, and the timing has to be really well done. It looks like Davout brought looks like 5th Division. Ney is the Württemberg Division, it looks like. So 3rd Division, and maybe bits of some of his other. Guard brought Ledoux and the Young Guard. And Napoleon for stars. He's fairly cheap in 1812, so it's kind of worth it to take it. Lots of horse guns I noticed. Murat has horse guns, Guard has horse guns, Ney has horse guns. Murat actually brought 2. It's a thing that, and we are having an early clash of cavalry here. As you can see on the map, Imperial is spreading out a light cav screen as far as they can to try and get some good early game scouting in. The Russians had ambushed them coming from this direction. On the Russian side, it's Wittgenstein, Bagration, Toutchkov, which is a Grenadier Corps, typically played, and then the Russian Guard under Konstantin. So they basically brought a very attacking-based infantry armies, almost like 2 different Grenadier or Guard corps with Toutchkov and Konstantin. Wittgenstein has very powerful infantry, and then Bagration to fill in the gaps with the full 2nd Western Army at his disposal. So yeah, the map itself, like I said, has lots of different sort of options to feel out. I've never seen this map played the same way twice, and it usually has lots of cool different pieces that end up getting played out. I'm mostly casting these games at random and somewhat blind, so I don't really do a deep dive before I start casting lately because I just haven't had the time. Some pretty interesting cav choices. The Carabiniers, Royal Cravats. I think I saw somewhere over here was Regiment de Fer. So the French are doing their best to put up a cav screen to try and find out what the Russian movements are. I think though, based on their generals all being right here, 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 and here, and moving in this direction, it looks like the Russians are trying to link up and are actually pushing the house that I said no one ever does. So Something LK is pretty good at under Sigizmund is kind of pulling blinders every now and again in terms of strategic choices on the game, and that typically plays into their hand. They can catch people off guard. Lots of Russian cav appearing. They typically have quite good cav overall. I think some of this is from Bagration. I know the Lancers probably are for sure. So both sides putting up cav screens for the early meeting engagements and trying to limit the enemy from gaining full knowledge of what their plans are. A major difficulty of this map is that it's divided by all these ridges, and then rivers bisecting as well. So armies actually spawn somewhat cut off. You can see, you know, there's an army here, an army here, and an army here. And in order for this army to link with this one, it actually has to cross the ridge. It can make it difficult. And same with like artillery support. You almost have to have lanes of artillery to try and maximize their potential. Otherwise, you know, the train itself blocks the ability to fire over it. So you're more or less stuck with these sort of lane shapes. So quite a bit of Russians appearing. I think that's the Pavlovsky. And you can hear lots more infantry trailing behind. Some more Russians over here. I want to say the yellow flags is guard, but I honestly don't remember. Someone is free to correct me in the comments, but I believe that's the guard L5s. That's Bagration Cav. He gets a couple different lancers. This map is like ideal for horse guns because of the, like I said, the terrain. You can kind of swing them around and get them bent into position as you need to. So it does look like Imperial have more or less understood their position. You can see Davout is filtering this way, Ney is filtering this way. The guard was crossing the ridge and now is coming back this direction. And it looks like the Russians are just gonna straight beeline it this way. So this cav over here is all somewhat of a feint. Bit of a risky cav engagement, I think.
Our men are running, sir.
So far working out in the favor of Murat. The Royal Cravats going in. None of this really can counter heavy cav, so beneficial to Imperial at this point. Funky pathfinding there. You can see that the order wasn't to cross the infantry, it just kind of got stuck on the house.
This building has fallen to the enemy.
So, pretty important decisive cav engagement here for Imperial side. Wiping out quite a bit of stuff, and for not too much lost overall. One really small Chevalier. But that is quite a bit of Murat off on this side. And more Russians appearing here. So the Russians are steaming down both of these angles here, and Davout is crossing this direction. There is Russian cav filtering in around here. I saw it earlier, but I didn't point it out just yet, because we were over here looking at this. Looks like maybe Murat left that following something else, and fortunately lost that there. a guard heavy cav, I believe. And now the guard is actually going to cross over the ridge. So this is a pretty textbook LK attack, in my opinion. They gathered everything they could and concentrated it on a narrow frontage to try and break through. That being said, it has been sort of scouted enough, and Imperial had enough time to reposition themselves. Whether or not they're set up enough for this attack is to be determined. I don't really trust Ney in 1812 currently. His morale is fairly low. He's not super fast, being L3, L4, and the stats are not super great. It looks like this front line is the expensive light infantry right now. Murat's presence is almost entirely centralized on this side of the map right now, and Russian cav is pushing around this flank, as I mentioned earlier. So, a bit of a scare. Guard horse guns setting up in the center there. More Russian heavy cav. Lots of skirmishers. This might actually be Bagration. And I think the white flags actually are the guard. Maybe? I don't know. I wish I remembered. I know that the guard in 1812 for Russia is the only one that has a unique flag. I think my sound just messed up. Oh, no, it's okay. Just the muskets aren't firing for some reason. So, Russia's setting up for a pretty big attack here. Imperial is definitely not ready. You can see that the Russians are in massed columns, and the Imperial army is still in trying to figure out what's going on. This is dragoons and things like that filtering in through this gap. Pretty big explosive charge here. Surprisingly clean so far, despite the way that the terrain breaks people up here. All of these posts make cav charges pretty difficult, and they're attacking through a fairly narrow frontage. Pretty good French infantry here to try and hold this house. As long as they hold the house, they can at least put damage in on the flanks of the Russian army here. They do here in the center. So right now you can see this is a pretty stacked attack with very little Russian forces in the rear. French cav is sweeping around to the backside, but Russian cav is doing the same on this other flank. Yeah, Ney's gonna take
our men are running for
the brunt of the attack here, it looks like. And Davout sending in his best infantry to sort of blunt the Russian attack and hold this house. But with this much Russian reserves coming up, it's not looking too great for the Imperial to hold indefinitely here.
This building has fallen to the enemy.
Ney's position's more or less untenable at this point. He lost most of his very, very good infantry and doesn't have a lot of, you know, second-hand infantry to make more attacks. The Württemberg lines are kind of just placeholders. They have okay morale, but they're not gonna hold up in an uphill battle against the Russian Guard. These horse guns are doing pretty well here, it looks like. But again, this is a lot of Russians coming up. This is probably Wittgenstein, judging by the large amount of small infantry units coming up. The Russians did expend quite a bit, but the French are still not really that organized yet for this type of an attack. And this little bit of cav and circling around is really pulling away resources from Murat. Davout still has some of his good infantry still hanging in. Felons are pretty nice. Lizards are kind of just trash to throw in melee. Ney's gun's doing pretty good damage on the flank here. And Murat coming around with C1s. I don't really understand the purpose of this maneuver. Unsupported C1s on an open flank. They kind of need to be here. So, LK seized the initiative at the beginning by catching the Imperials somewhat off guard in their overall scheme and forcing them into an engagement around this house that typically people don't fight at. If the Imperial didn't hold this position, then LK gets a favorable position here along this ridge line, which jeopardizes any of the Imperial positions down in the valley area. And not only that, but could open the door to the 4-pointer here, which is what this cav was probably trying to screen and open the door for. A nice catch by Defer against this cav standing still. There's just like not enough space for Murat to be usable in here just yet. And they're sending the smaller Russian heavies in. Pretty risky maneuvers from the Russian cav. Letuchiy coming down from the hill charge. French heavies engaging Russian heavies in the rear. Probably not really worth it to waste heavy cav against skirmishers when
Our men are
the
running,
front line
sir.
really needs them right here. Yeah, Thrall's not holding very long against Lizards once, or with the Lizards once the Russians had made contact. Wittgenstein's overall charging capability, and I mean the Russians in general, just outclass the French once you get a chain route going. You can see that both Ney and the guard kind of lost quite a bit there. Lots of charging and counter-charging. I'm pretty sure that what's his name? Davout was trying to retreat at the same time that the Russians attacked him. And yeah, when you're this close to this much Russian infantry, you're just not fast enough in this matchup. The Russians are L3, L4, sometimes L5, and you're L3, L4, sometimes L5. So you can't really turn your back on them, especially when they have the ability to open up lanes to send their dragoons in, and you don't have friendly cavalry that can make the same sort of counterattacking, delaying maneuvers.
The men are fatigued, sir, and must rest a while.
Some Russian cavs snuck around, probably looking for the generals. Accidentally went for a small unit of lancers that probably from afar would look like a general. You can tell that micro's kind of falling apart here for some of these guys. You know, you have units on top of other units, and Ledu retreating over friendlies, but you know, when you have an attack this aggressive across such a short and narrow frontage, it's kind of to be expected from both sides. Another somewhat poor attack by Ledu here. Also, he's very tired. I would never have made that charge. Especially with this terrain, you pretty much are guaranteed not to make a good impact, and it doesn't. And now he's got to retreat. He's getting blasted the entire way out. Don't really understand what the intent is of the heavy cav out here on the flank. Davout has basically ceased to exist, I think. Yeah, quite a bit of Davout is gone now. So overall, at this point in the fight, I would definitely put the Russians well and above in terms of raw assets and capabilities what the Imperial have left. Davout is basically dead. They are hucking in whatever cav they can to try and slow down the Russian armies. The Russians have lost a lot of their cav forces here and there, but they still have a pretty healthy reserve of stuff. You know, dragoons back here. I think I saw one heavy cav maybe somewhere around here that still might be alive. There's this heavy cav here, and they have a lot of infantry. It has suffered losses, but overall the number of men is still pretty high. Pretty nice charge by the 1 ER Carabiniers. But again, unsupported against probably Wittgenstein infantry. Oh no, that is Toutchkov. Yeah, just not enough here to stop the Russian advance. So the Russians probably traded lots of models, but they have a full fresh core here still, coming up in reserve. Ooh.
Our men are running, sir.
Yeah, not a good trade. Also not good. Changing targets last second like that is caused him to cross the skirmisher. You have to engage the unit in front. But yeah, sorry, back to the, where we're at. The Russians now have this high ground here. They have an entire corps here. Whatever's left of the French army is trying to form a line here and here-ish. I think their main goal will be to try and hold the Russians back from gaining this one pointer here and their HQ. Whether they can do that or not is to be determined still. They do have an advantage in guns. They probably still have a small advantage in cav, just between Ledoux and the remaining heavy cav. Infantry-wise, we have whatever of Ney has managed to rally some of the guard, and maybe part of Davout. A couple battalions managed to come back. So we'll go and fast forward a little bit here. So at this point, Imp needs to really think about LOC. Where can they defend this Russian advance? Can they defend against the Russian advance, or have they hit a critical period? They can see all of this Russian infantry moving, and they're in the safety of that rear, or safety of this hill here. So yeah, overall, don't know what the French can really do to stop this amount of Russian stuff. That being said, a lot of these units are probably below half strength, so if they can get good charges in with their heavy cav, then maybe they could turn it around. But this is pretty scary. These French guns are not quite at the angle that you'd want them to be at.
The men are fatigued, sir, and must rest a while.
These ones are getting pretty good fire, though. If you didn't know, if you give ground attack orders, you can fire backwards like this. So typically the guns can only fire, in their volley arc, but because this person targeted probably like right there, and by attacking ground, the guns fire backwards. Russians appear to be waiting for these probably slow L2 Bagration infantry. If I had to guess, it's maybe 1st Division of Bagration, because they have taken quite some time to get here. Looks like he was going for the horse guns here. Bit scummy there. These guns on this hill, though, firing canister down into the Russians will maybe tip the scales, especially if they can get a chain rock going on some of these small infantry. And with this other artillery firing straight down the road, they have a pretty good chance of doing some real damage. That being said, they don't have a lot of infantry to hold this position. That was pretty pretty gnarly. That was like 20 models off that Dragoon just now. I'm surprised it even made contact. He definitely ran over his own artillery to save that, but I think at this point in the Lord's season, we still were allowing people to kind of do those types of things. Guard is blasting its own men right now. But that canister is putting in some pretty good work. Regiment de Fer trying to pick off some units in the rear line. Davout trying to hold on with whatever he has here. Bit of a desperate charge. Also not sure if that one was worth it. They're just talking cav in, trying to trade cav for time. Because again, this is still a lot of Russian infantry. Ledu never got to properly rest, so I doubt it'll do very well.
The men are fatigued, sir, and must rest a while.
So yeah, as more or less expected, the Russian mass is just unstoppable at this point. They're basically death ball, walking wherever they want to. The French, like, realistically, can't stop the Russians from continuing down this way and taking their 4-pointer and getting locked. But seeing how little there is left of the French army here, they might just turn and sweep this way. You could probably pin with some stuff here and then sweep the flank, and then that's it. Like, win by a death match type of thing. We'll see. If the French cav had still been alive, it would be able to sort of break up this attack and stretch micro by, you know, attacking the rear line and the front line at the same times. GS scrims are really good at countering cav, typically. You see how that skirmisher didn't really get broken down? It's because they're probably grenadier scrims. Kind of a waste of your cav to throw them at skirmishers at this point. The Russians have quite a bit massed here, but they seem to be shooting themselves in the back, honestly. And kind of poor micro, maybe? I'm not sure. We'll see how this turns out. A little blobby. Some of these units are behind each other. Surprisingly though, the French just broke them with infantry of all things. So, yeah, honestly, kind of surprising. Now that the debuff is happening, it looks like that whole army is actually collapsing. I'm even surprised that the fresh Russian troops from, I think it's Bagration, are also falling apart. Probably because of the amount of debuffs that are coming here, but if it is First Division has pretty solid morale overall. So yeah, the Russians just went for a decisive attack and completely evaporated along this line, which shows how close run the first engagement, I guess, was. I wouldn't have guessed that this whole line would have collapsed the way that it did, especially against the French troops that were remaining. It looks like the French are pulling in some more assets to the center. That being said, the Russians still have an advantage, I think, in overall amount of infantry and things like that. And the French are almost out of cav, it seems like, too, because the Royal Polonaise just died to a square. Unlucky that they charged the only unit that probably can counterattack Russians. So Davout actually turned this back around again. The Russians lost 3 units for the French still having units. I think this skirmisher is going to come and help farm all this stuff down. You definitely don't want any of this coming back. And I honestly don't even know if what's left can make a realistic attack at this point. Wittgenstein is more or less on his last legs here. Some of these units are well below half strength, and they will not be able to take a house. And the French still have quite a bit of horse guns, and Napoleon, and Davout. So lots of stars to stack behind this house to try and hold it. Whether or not that's enough is still to be determined, I think. I'll go and fast forward. There's about 20 minutes left in this game. I want to see kind of where it goes to. We're kind of in the pick up the scraps end game, where neither side really has a ton left. Leon is in the house. Quantins. So Coalition can't really project power anymore. Their only, I guess, gamble now is to go for the 4-pointer. I think Davout just got executed by his own men, but could be wrong. Pretty unfortunate for them. That's a lot of stars that they may or may not have needed. Looks like Napoleon is going to go hang out in this house. They are thinking about what lock they can get. And Imps still have cav and horse guns.
The men are fatigued, sir, and must rest a while.
If they could kill their gens, there's a good chance that they won't have the morale to keep any of these units in the fight. I'm not even sure where the rest of the Russian gens are. Maybe in houses? Or routed somewhere. One of them died for sure. Maybe they only brought... No. I don't know. We'll keep fast forwarding. Most of this can be viewed at double or triple speed. This is the parts of clan games that I get a little bit tired of, which is like the after armies have either collapsed or been spent.
We have killed
You know,
their
trying to
generals,
get
now they must break.
1 or 2 houses in at the very last second is pretty difficult. You can see French units are also trickling back towards other houses now at this point. And yeah, I don't think this Russian attack is going to make it even to the house. So a bit of a bold maneuver overall. Like I said in the beginning, you had LK decide to push a direction that most people don't. They were able to screen it pretty well with their cav force. Murat met that cav force and was able to push it back just enough to be able to see over the hill to allow Davout to realize that he didn't need to go this way, but cut straight across to come here. And the Russians kind of lost a lot, I guess, more than it appeared to be in that main attack. They didn't bring a lot of other assets like artillery or anything. Everything was built on a blitz attack and following it through. And for the most part, it definitely worked, up until it didn't. And for whatever reason, the French decided that they weren't going to run anymore and broke the Russian army actually right here. So very surprising, given the amount that the Russians still had remaining. So pretty well played by both teams. A little messy here and there, but understandable with the amount of micro and other things going on during this game. Some perplexing uses of cav. The French definitely wasted some heavy cav over here against skirmishers. And the Russian cav over here probably could have got in behind Davout whenever they're pushing in forward. Just to completely collapse his micro. I'll go and keep fast forwarding because honestly I think this one will probably end in lock based on the end screen and the complete lack of units still remaining. I don't know what happened to Napoleon. Oh, there he is. As mentioned earlier, like this house is pretty easy to take because it's a ruins house. If it's properly supported, it can do a lot of damage, but because of how the shape of the house is and you can shoot into it, you can just shoot it down like he did. But if it's supported, it's really hard to push. Does look like another unit is in this house all the way over here. And the Russians are finally entering the rear house. But I think the French have enough around the house to hold it.
Sir, your general has been killed. This is a black day.
Murat taking an unlucky shot around the house. So Imperial now controls both 4-pointers, and the Russians are basically spent. They have one house, but I don't think there's enough time for all of the units to consolidate back together in the center. Yeah, pretty brutal attack. Definitely could catch people off guard. Well read by the Imperial side to at least come to counter it, and pretty well held overall. They apparently did a lot more damage than it appeared, as mentioned, and that was enough to make it so that the second attack ultimately failed, and that gave them the ability to ultimately win this game. So pretty cool back and forth. Another interesting game overall from the league play. But thanks again for watching. I'll post up the end screen here in a few seconds when the game ends. And yeah, I'll try to keep casting these as I can. Like I said, I'm picking them at random. It's all through the last season of games between clans, and hopefully we'll keep getting good ones, because some of them might be not as exciting. But thanks again for watching.